My name is Iris Outen. I'm 33, and in 7 months, I buried both of my parents. I sold our old family home in Greenville, North Carolina, and purchased a small condo on the coast, 2 blocks from the water. On the morning of day 2, before I'd even unpacked the kitchen, my adopted brother Trent walked in, lifted my keys off the entry table, and slipped them into his jacket pocket. "You don't need this place," he said. "Tomorrow I'm traveling with my wife's family. I can drop you at a shelter." I stood there. I didn't argue. 1 hour later, I texted him 3 words. "Look inside Dad's lockbox." He called back in 4 minutes. But what happened in the 28 days after that? That was the part nobody, including me, saw coming. Welcome back to the channel. This is a space for women who set boundaries the right way, with documents, dignity, and the courage to stay composed in rooms where everyone else is raising their voice. If you've ever been the one who showed up while the rest of your family simply collected, this story is for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and stay with me. What happens at that beach reception? You're going to want to see it. Sunday morning, 2nd June. I woke at 7, made coffee in the new percolator, and carried the mug out to the balcony. The sound was glass flat. A heron stood in the shallows 200 yards out, perfectly still, doing whatever herons do at 7 in the morning. I sat in the folding chair in my robe and let the steam rise off the cup. I thought, I'm going to do this every single day for the rest of my life. At 9:14, a red Ford F-150 pulled into the visitor lot. I noticed because the lot was nearly empty, and because the truck nosed in diagonally across 2 spaces, the way Trent had always parked. I watched from the balcony. The driver's door swung open. Trent stepped out in a polo shirt and shorts, sunglasses pushed up on his head. The passenger door opened. Wit. White capri pants, sandals, oversized purse. They walked toward the building entrance. Trent punched the visitor code into the lobby keypad. I watched him use it the way someone uses a code they feel entitled to. Like it was his building, like he lived here. My stomach made a slow, quiet turn. The knock on my door came 40 seconds later. They'd taken the elevator straight up. No call from the lobby. No call from the parking lot. No call the night before. Just appeared. I opened the door in my robe. Trent walked past me into the living room without waiting. He scanned it once, a slow, deliberate sweep, the way a buyer walks a property, then lowered himself into my new white linen armchair. Wit followed him in and closed the door behind her. She locked the deadbolt without asking. Then she turned and gave me the soft smile she'd given me at the funeral. "This is cute, Iris," Wit said. "Really cute." I should have known by the way he sat down, by the way she locked the door. By the way, his sunglasses came off his head and landed on my coffee table next to my book, as if he owned the surface. I poured them both coffee anyway. That's the kind of person I still was on day 1 in that condo. Trent took the coffee. He didn't drink it. He set it beside his sunglasses and leaned back into my chair. "So look," he started. "Wit and I were talking last night, and honestly, Iris, this whole thing, the condo, the move, all of it, it's a lot for someone on their own, This is a lot of square footage and a lot of monthly expense for one person who just lost her parents." 640 square feet, I said, "and the math works." Wit stepped in, her voice soft and heavy with practiced concern. "Sweetheart, honestly, this is too much for someone alone. We've been so worried about you." Trent stood. He walked to the entry table. My keys were sitting in the small ceramic bowl I'd had since college. 2 keys on a simple ring, front door of the unit, and the mailbox downstairs in the lobby. He picked them up, looked at them for a moment. Then he opened his jacket and slid them into the inner breast pocket, zipped it shut. I watched him do every bit of it. "You don't need this house," Trent said. He turned to face me, using the voice our father had once used on the dog when the dog had done something it shouldn't have. "Tomorrow I'm traveling with Wit's family. We're driving to Asheville for the week. I can drop you at a shelter on the way out of town." Wit nodded along. "Just for a couple of weeks, we can figure everything out more rationally, She paused. "Bart said he could help with the listing." I tilted my head. "Bart." "My brother. He's a realtor. He thinks we could get $380 for this place. Probably more in season. Just let us help, sweetheart." I noticed her phone screen flicker to life on the arm of my couch where she'd set it. a Zillow agent notification, listing draft, address line 4127 Soundfront Way, Unit 412. Mine. She saw me see it. She turned the phone face down. I didn't say anything for a full beat. Then I said, okay. Trent looked at me. Whit looked at me. I'd caught them both off guard. Okay, Trent repeated slowly. You've got the keys, I said. I think this conversation is done. For about 30 seconds, nobody moved. I believe they were waiting for me to plead, to explain myself, to shrink. That was the script for the version of me they thought they'd come here to find. The worn-down caregiver in a robe at 9 in the morning with hospice still living somewhere in her hair. Trent arrived 20 minutes late. Whit was driving. The first thing I heard her say as they crossed the wet grass was, I told you we should have left earlier. The parking is a nightmare. She kissed my cheek. She had never kissed my cheek before. Iris, she whispered. I'm so sorry for your loss. It was the most personal sentence she had ever spoken to me. Trent hugged me. I let him. He smelled of a cologne I didn't recognize, expensive in a way that didn't quite fit him. He had put on weight since his last visit, and his eyes were red. He cried during the service. Whit reached across and patted his hand twice. After the burial, people drifted back to the house on Elm for sandwiches and coffee. I had hired a teenage girl from the church to help refill the platters. I was standing at the kitchen counter, rinsing forks, when Whit cornered me. She had a woman beside her I hadn't met, mid-60s, blonde bob, careful makeup. Whit introduced her as my mother, Diane Caldwell. She drove up from Wilmington just to be here. Diane took my hand in both of hers. Sweetheart, we are so sorry. Her grip was firm. She held on a beat longer than I expected. Then Whit asked, perfectly casual, Iris, did your mom ever mention her jewelry? Any of the pieces? I set the fork I was holding into the rack. I didn't answer. I picked up the empty sandwich platter, carried it back to the dining room, and arranged a fresh stack. When I returned to the kitchen, Trent was standing in the hallway looking toward me. He had come from upstairs, from the back of the house where my father's office was. I hadn't seen him go up. You good? I asked. Yeah, he said, just looking around. 3 months later, on a Friday in mid-January, we sat in the conference room of Bryson & Park, the small estates firm in downtown Greenville that had handled my parents' legal affairs for 15 years. Tom Bryson read the will aloud. He was 72, measured, the kind of attorney who still wore a bow tie. The will was clean and specific. The house at 1418 Elm Street, along with its contents to me, a loan codicil, signed and notarized 14 months before Mom died, stated that the bequest was made in recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years of life. The brokerage account, the term life policy, my father's truck, and the savings account at First Citizens was split 60-40, with a larger portion going to Trent. Tom explained the dollar values were roughly equivalent ones you factored in the home's appraisal and upkeep. The intent, he said, was balance. Trent went red across the forehead. He said nothing during the reading. Whit did. Her hand went up as though she were in a classroom. Mr. Bryson, sorry, just to clarify, this is the version that's actually valid? There isn't an earlier draft? This is the only executed will, Tom said. Signed in July, codicil in October of the following year, both notarized. Whit nodded slowly. Got it. Just making sure. I said nothing in that room. I signed the acknowledgement page. I shook Tom's hand. I walked out to the parking lot with Trent and Whit 10 paces behind me. At my car, Whit caught up and placed her hand on my forearm. Her wedding ring was new, a larger stone than I remembered. Iris, she said in her gentlest voice. We should all sit down, a family meeting. Be honest about how to divide things so nobody ends up feeling resentful. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. The will is what Dad wrote, I said. I didn't write it. She offered a tight smile and let go. That afternoon, I drove back to Puett and Hayes and asked the receptionist to pull a certified copy of everything, one for the office file, one for myself. Then I drove to the SunTrust branch on Memorial Drive and rented a safety deposit box. Number 247, I placed the copies inside and slid the drawer shut. That evening at the house, I noticed the small brass key hanging above the kitchen sink. The key to Dad's cedar lockbox. I didn't open it, not yet. 5 months passed. I lived in the house alone. I worked from the kitchen table. I kept Dad's office door closed and never opened it. I let Mom's reading chair sit empty in the den and never sat in it. I changed the sheets on my old bed every 2 weeks because the scent of the hospice room didn't leave until the third wash. One Saturday in April, I stood in the middle of the living room with a cup of coffee in my hand and stared at the wallpaper. Pale green wines, hung in 1989. Dad had complained about it for 30 years. I realized I couldn't stay another month. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum I'd been serving as the unpaid curator of, and I was the only visitor. I called a realtor on Monday morning, listed on Wednesday, open house the following Sunday. We had 3 offers by Tuesday, and on the 4th day I accepted. A young couple, second baby on the way. The husband had grown up 2 streets over. $410,000, closing in 35 days. I didn't tell Trent until the contract was already signed. I called him from my car in the grocery store parking lot, the way you call someone you don't want to give a chance to argue. "You're selling Mom and Dad's house." His voice tightened. "It's not Mom and Dad's anymore," I said. "It's mine by the will and I can't live here. I'm putting it on the market and using my share to buy a place on the coast." There was a long pause. Then I heard Whit in the background saying something I couldn't make out. Trent muffled the phone with his palm. When he came back, his voice had shifted entirely. "Honey," he said. He had never called me honey in his life. "We need to talk about that money, like a real conversation. Whit and I have been thinking about a few things and we could really use." "I have to go," I said. "I'm at Harris Teeter." I hung up. I should have recognized it then. Anyone with a straightforward sibling would have, but I had just spent 14 months pretending I wasn't drowning, and pretending is a habit you can't shed overnight. I just kept moving. I packed the house in 8 weeks. I found the condo in Corolla over 3 weekends. I closed cash, $340,000, on a 1-bedroom on the 4th floor, 2 blocks from the Currituck Sound. Move-in date, the first weekend of June. I still hadn't opened the lockbox. I'd come close twice. I decided to wait until I was settled in the new place. The movers finished before lunch. 8 boxes from Greenville. 2 pieces of furniture I'd kept. Mom's reading chair after all, and Dad's cedar lockbox. I had the movers load the box onto the truck personally, making sure nothing happened to it in transit. It had sat in the corner of his office since I was a child. He'd built it himself in 1991 from leftover cedar salvaged off a barn job. 22 inches long, 16 wide, 10 deep, brass corners. A small lock he'd fitted himself with a tiny brass key. The movers carried it up to the 4th floor and set it exactly where I directed, in the master bedroom closet on the 2nd shelf. I closed the closet door. The cedar scent lingered inside like a held breath. After they left, I stood on the balcony for a long time. The condo was small, 640 square feet, 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a balcony just wide enough for 2 folding chairs. The water wasn't ocean exactly, it was Currituck Sound, but you could smell the salt from upstairs, and on a clear day, you could make out the lighthouse over at Corolla. The Hoa dues were $315 a month. I had run the numbers 4 times. I could carry it on my salary alone. I had done it. I walked down to the beach at the end of that day. June soon, low and golden. I sat in the sand in my work pants and let the wind pull my hair loose. And for the first time in 5 months, for the first time since Mom, I cried. Not heavily, not loudly, just a few minutes of quiet tears, the kind that don't ask permission first. I felt grief. And underneath the grief, something I hadn't anticipated. Lightness, like a piece of luggage I'd been hauling for years, had been set down on a bench somewhere and I could simply walk away from it if I chose. That night, I slept 9 hours. The first 9 unbroken hours in over a year. I had given Trent the lobby visitor code 2 weeks earlier when he called offering to help me move. I declined, but the gesture had felt like genuine effort. I gave him the code anyway, in case of emergency. He'd said, "Cool, I'll save it." Tomorrow I'd wake up free. That was what I believed. The cedar box sat in the closet. I told myself I'd open it Saturday. I had time now. The 14 months before my mother died were the longest 14 months of my life. Ovarian cancer, Stage 4 by the time the scans returned, which meant treatment but not a cure. I asked my supervisor at Puit and Hayes, the probate firm where I'd worked as a paralegal for 10 years, if I could shift to remote. He said yes within the hour, so I packed my laptop into the guest room of the house on Elm Street and moved back in. My mother's name was Helen. She had been a kindergarten teacher for 27 years before the diagnosis. We converted my old childhood bedroom into a hospice room. The hospital bed arrived on a Wednesday. The oxygen concentrator hummed at the foot of it for the next year, and change. I learned how to swap a cannula at 3 in the morning without turning on the overhead light. I learned which Walmart carried the cheapest case of Ensure. I learned that my mother could squeeze my hand even when she could no longer form words. My brother Trent visited 3 times. I want to be specific about that because for a long time afterward, people would say that family members process grief differently. 3 visits in 14 months, roughly 2 hours each. His wife, Whit, never came inside. Once she dropped him in the driveway and waited in the car with the engine running. He stayed 40 minutes that day. I wasn't angry then. I was too exhausted to be angry. Anger requires energy, and I had none. I had a yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter where I wrote things like new tubing Thursday and refill anti-nausea and call about the catheter. That was where my mind lived. The version of me capable of feeling things had been folded up and placed in a drawer somewhere. I figured I'd take her out later when there was time. Dad died first. A heart attack, sudden in January. He was watering the rose bushes. The neighbor found him in the grass. I drove home from work and sat with him until the funeral home came. Mom watched from the kitchen window because she was too weak to step outside. She didn't cry until 2 days later in the casket selection room when she placed her hand on the lid of the simple pine box and whispered that he'd hate the brass handles. After that, it was just the two of us, me, her, the lesson plans she kept tracing with one finger, and the cancer. Mom died in October on a Tuesday morning, her hand resting on top of mine. The hospice nurse, a soft-voiced woman named Anita, sat with me for 2 hours after the breath left the room. She didn't say anything. She simply stayed. I would remember her for that. The funeral was the following Saturday at Riverside Cemetery in Greenville. Light rain, 40-some people in dark coats. I had ordered the standing sprays, the program leaflets, the soloist. I had called the church. I had written the obituary in the kitchen at 1 in the morning with a cup of tea going cold beside the laptop. I think Whit had even rehearsed the next part of the conversation during the drive over. Mediation language, family compromise, the soft hand on the forearm. I just stood there with my coffee. Iris, Whit said carefully, we're trying to help you. I heard you, I said. Trent looked at his wife. She looked at her phone, still face down on the couch arm. He looked back at me. So you're cool with this, he said. You're cool just letting us handle things for you? I think you should head out, I said. You mentioned you're driving to Asheville tomorrow. That's a long drive. You'll want to rest tonight. Iris, honey, Whit tried again. Let me give you a hug. She moved toward me. I stepped back, not dramatically, just one clean step into the kitchen, hand still wrapped around my coffee mug, the counter between us now. She stopped. Okay, she said brightly, as if we'd just reached an agreement. Okay, we'll call you tonight. We'll get all of this sorted out. They walked out the way they'd come in. Trent collected his sunglasses from the coffee table. Whit picked up her purse and her phone. He paused at the door with his hand on the frame like he was searching for something paternal to say. Nothing came to him. He left. The deadbolt was still locked from when Whit had turned it earlier. I unlocked it, opened the door, and stood in the hallway watching them walk to the elevator. Trent punched the button. He didn't look back. They stepped in. The doors closed. I went inside. I locked the deadbolt myself this time. I walked to the kitchen drawer beside the refrigerator. Taped to the inside back wall, inside a small Ziploc bag, was a second set of keys to the unit. I'd had them cut on the day I closed. I always kept a spare. 10 years at a probate firm will teach you that. I sat down. I made another coffee. Then I picked up my phone and pulled up Trent's contact. I looked at his name, I looked at his photo, an old one, him at 17 in a graduation gown with his arm around my shoulders. I was 12 in that picture. I'd cropped it, so it was just the two of us, no mom and dad in the frame. I'd kept it because I had genuinely liked having an older brother. I tapped the message box. I typed 3 words. Look inside Dad's logbox. I read it. I sent it. 4 minutes passed. 4 minutes and 12 seconds by the clock on the microwave. The phone vibrated on the counter. Trent's name on the screen. I let it ring. Voicemail picked up. I muted the phone. Then I called Carolyn Poet on her cell. Carolyn was the named partner at Poet and Hayes. She'd hired me 10 years before when I was 23 and a community college legal assistant. Certificate was the only credential on my resume. She taught me how a will gets contested, how a codicil holds, how to read a deed in under 90 seconds. She was 58, grey-haired, twice divorced, and she answered her cell on Sundays. Iris, tell me. He came over, I said. He took my keys. He said he'd drop me at a shelter. A brief silence on her end, the kind a lawyer makes when she's deciding whether to be a lawyer or a friend first. All right, she said. Monday morning, my office 8:30. Bring your phone with the texts. Don't engage, don't argue, let it run. Already doing it, I said. That's my girl. The will copies 247 at Suntrust Memorial. Pull them tomorrow. Bring them up. I will. I hung up. I made a list on the yellow legal pad I'd brought up from Greenville, the same pad where I once wrote things like New Tubing Thursday. Now I wrote, Monday, Suntrust, 247. Carolyn, 8:30. Concierge, do not let up. Deadbolt, this evening. I underlined the last item twice. Then I called Coastal Lock and Key in Corolla and asked if they had a same-day opening. They did. 5. The first voicemail from Trent came in at 11:43. It was the first of 5. I let them all go. I wrote down the timestamp of each one on the legal pad, and after I listened, I noted a one-line summary of the content beside it. I didn't reply to any of them. 11:43. Iris, what logbox? I don't know what you're talking about. Just call me back. This is dumb. Confused. Playing it casual. 12:17. Look, I'm not in the mood for games. Wit thinks you're trying to mess with our heads. Call me back. Annoyed. Wit audible somewhere in the background. 1:55. I just got off the phone with Wit's mom. She thinks you're being ungrateful. I told her you'd had a hard year. Just call. Triangulating, bringing Diane into it. 4:22. Iris, if you don't call me back by end of day, I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'm not playing around. We have rights here too. A threat. Empty, but now on the record. 8:09. I'm driving to Greenville tomorrow morning. If there's a lockbox at the old house, I'll find it. Whatever you think is in there, it's not yours alone. You don't get to keep things from family. I listened to that last one twice. Not because it rattled me, but because I wanted the exact wording for Carolyn. I transcribed it word for word onto the pad. He had said, whatever you think is in there, it's not yours alone. I underlined that sentence. He didn't know the house had closed on the 20th. The new owners had taken possession the day before. The cedar box wasn't at 1418 Elm Street anymore. It was here in my closet on the second shelf. He'd find an empty bedroom upstairs and a young father painting it for a nursery. At 5, the locksmith arrived. 45 minutes, $210, new deadbolt cylinder, new keys. He handed me 3. I gave 1 back for his shop file as a record of the work and tipped him $20. I taped the new keys to the inside back wall of the kitchen drawer. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to Greenville and opened safety deposit box 247. The Suntrust branch on Memorial was quiet on a Monday at 10. I had called ahead. The branch manager, a woman named Lorraine I'd known for 6 years, walked me back without small talk. She unlocked the room, slid the drawer onto the table and left. I sat down, I put on my reading glasses, I opened the lid. 3 things inside. The first was a certified copy of my parents' last will and testament signed in July of the year before Mom died. The codicil signed in October, 3 weeks before her diagnosis was upgraded to terminal, specified the house, its contents, and an explicit reason in recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years of life. Attached was an attorney affidavit from Tom Bryson confirming that both my parents had been of sound mind, separately interviewed, with no coercion involved. The second was a handwritten letter from my father. 2 pages, lined notebook paper, his careful engineering school cursive, dated 6 weeks before he died. He couldn't have known then how little time he had left. The letter began, Iris, your mother and I both know who has carried this family. He went on for 2 pages, measured and precise, describing what he and mom had observed. Who had shown up to the hospital during his gallbladder surgery in 2019? Who answered the phone every Sunday without fail? Who had quietly set aside her entire social life for 14 months without ever once making it about herself? The final line read, Don't let him take this house from you. Use it for yourself. Promise me. The third was a sealed envelope, cream-colored paper, my mother's handwriting on the front. It said, Iris, read when you need it, not before. I didn't open it. I knew I would eventually, but not yet. I placed it back in the drawer alongside the will and Dad's letter. I photographed everything with my phone, both sides of each page. I emailed the photos to Carolyn before I left the room. I locked the drawer. The papers didn't carry the cedar scent. They smelled of Voltaire and lemon polish. They smelled like the world saying quietly, here's what is true. 2 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, the buzzer on my unit door sounded. Not the lobby buzzer, the unit buzzer directly, which meant whoever it was had already made it upstairs without going through the concierge. I checked the peephole. Diane Caldwell was standing in my hallway in a coral linen dress, holding a green Pyrex casserole dish with a plastic lid. She saw the peephole go dark. She smiled. Iris, sweetheart, it's Diane. May I come in for a few minutes? I opened the door 6 inches. How did you get up? Oh, a lovely young man let me in downstairs. I told him I was visiting my daughter-in-law's sister. I let her step into the entry. I did not invite her past it. I closed the door behind her. I walked her out to the balcony and seated her in one of the 2 folding chairs. I kept the slider open behind us, but I did not sit down. She set the Pyrex on the small bistro table between us. The lid had a label written in black marker, Diane Caldwell, Family Cookout 2024. It's still warm, she said. Chicken and rice. I make it for everyone going through a hard time. My pastor swears by it. That's kind of you, I said. She talked for 20 minutes. She talked about family healing. She talked about how Trent had been crying. She talked about how the years move fast and how regret is the heaviest thing a woman can carry into her 70s. She talked about compromise. She used the word sweetheart 11 times. I started counting toward the end. She leaned forward and placed her hand on my knee. Iris, honey, she said. Family doesn't keep secrets from family. We're all just trying to find our way back to each other. I didn't answer that one. I asked instead, Mrs. Caldwell, would you like me to refrigerate the casserole? She blinked, caught off guard by the shift. Oh yes, sure. Put it in the fridge, sweetheart. I carried the Pyrex inside and set it on the middle shelf beside a half-empty quart of milk. There was a folded note tucked underneath the dish on the lid. I read it without unfolding it fully. 3 words in her handwriting, call your brother. I left the note exactly where it sat. I came back to the balcony and stood with my hand resting on the slider frame. Mrs. Caldwell, I said, I think you should go now. She went. That night, my phone began lighting up. I'd been added back to the family group chat. It was called the Outen family. I had quietly left it 4 months earlier because I had needed silence. They'd re-added me without asking. Members, Trent, Whit, Diane, a man named Bart, Whit's older brother, whom I had met twice, a woman named Linda, Bart's wife, and a name I didn't recognize at all, Merlane Caldwell, apparently Whit's cousin in Charlotte. 6 of them, one of me. 47 messages arrived within 2 hours. Whit, 8:13. Hey Iris, we're worried about you. Can you respond, please? We just want to know you're okay. Trent, 8:15. Iris, come on. Diane, 8:20. Family, let's remember that grief affects people differently. We need to be patient with Iris, but firm. She needs us right now. Bart, 8:31. Hey Iris, real quick, I run Caldwell Coastal Realty. I can list the condo in 48 hours. My client Brett's looking for a one bedroom in season, just let me know. I read that one twice. He had placed his pitch inside the family chat as though it were a casual favor, as though I had asked. Wit 906. She always was the favorite. Now she's the entitled one. Sorry, just being real. Then 910. Whitney. Wit 911. I said sorry. Linda 922. Sending love and prayers to everyone in this difficult time. Merlin 945. Just got caught up reading. I'm so sorry y'all are going through this. Iris, sweetheart, you should know that family is forever. Money comes and goes. I screenshotted every message. I emailed the screenshots to Carolyn in batches. I muted the chat but did not leave it because Carolyn had told me the night before on the phone, don't leave. Let them talk. Let them put it in writing. Writing is what we work with. I sat on my balcony at 10 that night with the slider closed behind me and listened to the quiet, steady rush of the sound. The condo lights in the units below mine glowed in soft yellow squares. The reception was Saturday. The our welcome event for new residents. I knew without needing to think about it that they would show up. All of them. If you're still with me, you already know how this is going to feel. That moment when the quiet one finally produces the paper. I want you to see it exactly the way I saw it. Drop a comment with one word, just say Lockbox so I know you're here. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And let's keep going. The reception is 6 days away. Wednesday morning, 8:30. I drove the 2 hours back to Poet and Hayes and sat in Carolyn's office. She had cleared her entire morning. She read through everything on her dual monitors, the will, the codicil, Dad's letter, my written transcripts of the 5 voicemails, the 47 group chat screenshots, the lobby camera footage of Sunday morning that Robert the concierge had pulled and emailed me, and the Zillow draft listing screenshot I'd captured from Wit's phone before she'd flipped it face down. Carolyn took notes on a yellow legal pad, the same kind I used. We'd both been trained by the same firm, decades apart. When she finished, she set her pen down. Iris, you have a clean case, she said. There is no equity claim here. The codicil is specific, the witnesses are unimpeachable, the affidavit is airtight. Trent can hire a lawyer, he won't, but he could, and that lawyer will tell him to walk away. Witt's brother is exposed for unauthorized solicitation under Carolina real estate licensing statutes. Diane is exposed for what appears to be deliberate interference with your standing among neighbors. We don't sue any of them. We send cease and desist letters. We document everything. We move forward with our lives. Okay, I said. I'll have the letters drafted by Friday. 4 envelopes, one for each of them. Ready to serve by end of week. She paused. She took her glasses off. Iris, can I ask you something as your friend, not your lawyer? Sure. Why didn't you do this 6 months ago? I thought about it. I was exhausted, I said, and I wanted them to choose differently. I kept thinking, if I stay quite long enough, maybe Trent will read the will and read his father's letter and decide to be a brother. I didn't want to be the one who escalated it. She nodded slowly. And now? Now I'd like you to be my +1 Saturday at 6. The condo's Hoa welcome reception. She smiled. The smallest possible smile, just one corner of her mouth. Iris, I'd love to. That same Wednesday afternoon at 2:14, my phone buzzed with a notification from the building security app. Lobby camera, visitor arriving for unit 412. I tapped through. Trent was standing at the front desk. Behind him, in a navy work shirt with a yellow patch on the shoulder, was a man carrying a small tool bag. The patch read Coastal Lock and Key, the same company I had called on Sunday evening. I nearly laughed. Of all the locksmiths in Corolla, there are 4. Trent had called the one whose number was already in my recent call log. I rang Robert at the front desk. Don't let him up. He doesn't have authorization. Yes, ma'am, Robert said. I switched back to camera view and watched on mute. Trent was arguing, neck flushed, hands open wide. The locksmith stood behind him with the patient expression of a man who had witnessed this exact scene before. Robert spoke calmly, gesturing with one hand. Trent slapped the desk lightly with his palm. The locksmith took a measured step back. After 8 minutes, the locksmith said something to Trent, shook his head once, and walked out. Trent stayed another 4 minutes, arguing to no one. Then Robert picked up the phone, and my own phone vibrated in my hand. Mrs. Oughton, your brother is asking me to provide a key from the master file. I told him we don't keep one. You don't? I said. I changed the cylinder Sunday. Yes, ma'am, I figured. He's also telling me you're emotionally unstable and that he's concerned for your safety. I'm fine, Robert. I'm sitting on my balcony watching the camera feed. Robert let out a quiet chuckle. All right, I'll see him out. The keys Trent had lifted from my entry table on Sunday now opened nothing. The new ones were in my kitchen drawer on the strip of tape, visible every time I pulled it open. I had used Coastal, the same shop he'd called, to rake my deadbolt before sunset that same Sunday. I had kept the receipt. I would be glad I had. Thursday morning, I was in the elevator heading down to the mailroom when the doors opened on the third floor and a woman of about 71 stepped in. Short white hair, oval gold-rimmed glasses, a tote bag from the Outer Banks Public Library. I had seen her once or twice in the corridor. Hi, she said. Marge Halcombe. I'm in 306. Iris Oughton, 412. She studied me for a moment. Iris, she said, I think we need to have a little talk before Saturday. The doors opened on the lobby. We walked out together. She nodded at Robert and guided me to one of the seating pods near the front windows. Honey, Marge said, settling into a chair and patting the seat beside her. I've had 2 women in this building call me this week about you, asking if I'd heard anything, asking if you seemed all right. Both of them said the same thing, that they'd been contacted by a woman named Diane who was concerned about you. Diane told them you just lost your parents and seemed to be acting unstable. She wanted to know if anyone in the building had noticed anything alarming. I felt my jaw tighten. That's my brother's mother-in-law. Marge nodded slowly. I figured I worked as a court reporter for 31 years up in Norfolk before I retired down here. Iris, I know exactly what a smear campaign sounds like. She tried it on me too. I told her I had just met you and you seemed perfectly fine, and she was welcome to call me again when she found a more worthwhile hobby. I smiled, just slightly. The first genuine smile in 3 days. The reception is Saturday at 6, Marge said. I'm at table 4. I have an empty chair beside me. You take it. Bring your lawyer if you have one. She paused. I have a feeling you do. I do. Then you're all set, sweetheart. I'll have the chair waiting. She patted my arm, stood up, and walked off with her library tote. I watched her go. I went back upstairs and laid out my navy dress for Saturday. Thursday evening, after the sun had dropped behind the building and the sound had gone grey, I opened the bedroom closet and lifted the cedar lockbox down from the shelf. I set it on the floor in front of me and sat cross-legged before it, the way I had once sat in front of the Christmas tree at 6 years old. The cedar scent rose up like a long-held breath, finally released. Workshop. Dad's hands. Resin and pencil shavings. For a moment, I had to close my eyes. I unlocked it with the brass key and lifted the lid. I had left Mom's sealed envelope in safety deposit box 247 on Monday, but I hadn't removed anything from the cedar box itself when I'd moved. The contents inside were Dad's smaller things, his old watch, his wedding band, to photographs of him as a young man in fatigues, a small wooden owl he had carved the year I was born. Those things had been there all along. But on the inside of the lid, tucked into a thin canvas pocket I had never once noticed in 25 years of looking at this box, was a second envelope, cream paper, Mom's handwriting on the front, the same instruction, Iris, raid when you need it, not before. She had made 2 copies, one in the vault, one in the box, so I couldn't miss it. I worked my thumbnail along the seal. 2 pages, the letter was composed and unhurried, written in pen the way she wrote her grocery lists. It said in her own words that by the time I read this, someone would be telling me I owed them more than the will had given them, that they would dress it up in family and in love. She told me not to believe it. She wrote, Your father and I made the will the way we did because we watched. We watched who showed up. We watched who didn't. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are the last gift I can give you. I read it 3 times. Friday morning, Carolyn emailed me the drafts. 4 C's and desist letters on Puit and Hayes letterhead. Each one precise. Each one signed. Letter A to Trent. An itemized account of the unauthorized acts, entering my home and removing my keys, attempting unauthorized lock changes, the recorded threats on voicemail, a demand to seize all contact except through counsel, certified mail required. Letter B to Wit. The same foundation plus the unauthorized real estate listing draft, which Carolyn had pulled directly from a public Zillow agent portal I hadn't even known she could access. Letter C to Diane. Cease and desist, plus a separate paragraph addressing the privacy violation involved in calling my neighbors to circulate false claims about my mental stability. Carolyn had cited the specific state statute. I read the citation twice. It felt good to read. Letter D to Bart. Cease and desist, plus a draft complaint to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission regarding unauthorized solicitation and the use of family pressure to secure a listing. I printed all 4. I addressed the envelopes by hand to make it deliberate. I sealed them in 4 legal-sized envelopes, white, labeled in black pen. I placed them in my canvas tote, the one I'd carried to safety deposit box 247, the one that still carried a faint trace of cedar. I called Carolyn at 4. Saturday confirmed. 6 start. Meet me in the lobby at 5:45. I'll be in a navy dress. I'll be in a black blazer, she said, so we'll match. I laughed. And then I almost cried because I hadn't laughed in months. I went to bed at 9 with the tote on the chair beside the bed and the letters sealed inside it. I didn't plan to hand them out unless I had no other choice. Only if the 4 of them came to that reception and forced the moment. Carolyn and I had agreed on that. I knew the way you simply know. They were going to make me use them on Saturday. I woke at 6:15. The sound was silver. The herons were back. I made coffee, scrambled 2 eggs, ate at the small table in front of the slider. I had laid out the dress the night before. Navy, knee-length, 3/4 sleeves, low-heeled black pumps that wouldn't make me taller than Carolyn. My mother's pearl earrings, the small ones, the only piece of her jewelry I had taken from the house on Elm before the sale. I read Mom's letter one more time at the kitchen table. Then I read Dad's letter once. I placed them both back in the cedar box and locked it. At 5:30, Marge knocked on my door. I had told her I was going down at 5:45. She was early, in a lavender pantsuit with a small pearl necklace at her throat, looking like a woman who had testified in 3,000 courtrooms and had never once been late. You ready, honey? I think so. She held her gaze on me a beat longer than necessary. Then she nodded. In the elevator going down, the floor numbers ticked past 1 at a time. The car was empty except for us. Marge studied her reflection in the polished brass panel. You don't need to prove a single thing tonight, Iris. Just remember, you live here. They don't, I said quietly, more to myself than to her. I don't need to prove I belong. I just need to remember that I do. She turned and looked at me. She nodded once. The doors opened on the lobby end. Carolyn was already there by the front desk in her black blazer, a slim leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Robert was at his post and gave me a small, quick thumbs-up that meant more to me than he could have known. And so was Trent, so was Whit, so was Diane, carrying the green Pyrex casserole dish with a foil-covered lid, so was Bart in a tan blazer with a small enamel pin on the lapel. All 4 of them already there. This next part is the one I replayed in my mind for weeks afterward. If you have ever stood in front of people who treated you like a problem to be managed, this is the moment you've been waiting for them to feel what you've been quietly carrying. If this story is reaching something real inside you, hit subscribe before we walk into that reception. And tell me in the comments, who is your Carolyn? The lobby of Soundfront condominiums had been transformed for the evening. 6 round tables, white linen, low centerpieces of hydrangeas in mason jars, a cheese board the width of a coffee table, sparkling cider in glass pitchers, a jazz playlist drifting softly from a speaker in the corner, the kind of jazz no one is actively listening to. About 40 residents had gathered. couples in their 70s, a pair of young mothers from the third floor with their husbands. Mrs. Henley, the Hoa president, 65, a retired accountant, in a peach silk blouse with a tortoise shell clip in her hair. She called the room to attention to introduce the 3 new residents who had moved in that month. And finally, she said warmly, our newest Iris out in Unit 412. Iris, give us a wave. I waved. Polite applause. I sat down at Marge's table, table 4. Carolyn took the seat to my left. Marge settled into the seat on my right. The 2 empty chairs at our table stayed empty. At 6:18, the lobby doors swung open. Diane came in first, the Pyrex held out in front of her like a peace offering. Trent stood behind her, Whit beside him, Bart in the realtor's blazer. They had not been on the guest list because they were not residents. Diane walked straight up to Mrs. Henley. We're so sorry to crash, Mrs. Henley. We're family of the new resident, just here to support our Iris. Mrs. Henley, who had not been warned, did the gracious thing. She gestured them in. Diane set the Pyrex down on the side table next to the cheese board, the same green Pyrex from Tuesday, the casserole dish she had carried into my home with the note tucked under the lid. She had washed it and brought it back tonight like a flag. Carolyn beside me did not move. Marge on my other side did not move. I did not move. The jazz kept playing. Whit scanned the room. Her eyes found me. She walked toward our table, smiling her funeral smile. Trent followed. Diane followed. Bart trailed last, looking at the cheese board like a man calculating how long he had to stay. Diane reached our table first. She did not sit. She put one hand on the back of the empty chair next to me and squeezed the wood the way you'd squeeze a podium. Iris, sweetheart, she said at full volume, intentionally projecting. We all need to clear the air, honey. You can't keep avoiding family. It's not healthy for you, and it's not fair to your brother. Maybe 30 heads in the room turned. The jazz kept playing, oblivious. Trent stepped up beside her. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been driven somewhere by his wife and his mother-in-law and had not been asked what he wanted to do. Iris, he said, you took my share. You bought all this with our parents' money. You owe me a real conversation. I'm asking for one. Whit was on his other side. She did the thing she did at the funeral, the soft hand on the heart, the eyes welling. We've been trying so hard to be patient, Iris. You won't even pick up the phone. Bart, near the cheese board, smiled at Mrs. Henley with the practiced calm of a man who sold houses for a living. We are just here to mediate, ma'am. Nobody wants a scene. Diane raised her voice another notch. Honey, she said, family doesn't keep secrets from family. Be the bigger person. You don't need this house more than your brother's children do. It landed like she'd planned it to. The exact same shape as the line Trent had used in my living room on Sunday morning. You don't need this house. Now in front of 40 strangers, dressed up in mother-in-law concern. Marge on my right set her cider down quietly. Carolyn on my left did not move. I looked at Diane, I looked at Trent, I looked at Whit. I looked at Bart, who at least had the decency to drop his eyes when mine landed on him. The room was waiting. I reached down to the canvas tote at my feet. I lifted it onto my lap. I opened the top. The jazz finally ended on a soft, sustained chord and didn't restart. I pulled the 4 envelopes out of the tote, white, legal size, hand-addressed in black pen. I set the tote back down. I stood and took 6 steps to where they were standing in the center of the room. I gave Trent envelope a first. He took it because someone hands you something. You take it. He didn't open it. He just looked at me. I gave Whit envelope B. She held it the same way, both hands, like she didn't know what kind of gift it was. I gave Diane envelope C. Her hand twitched as she received it. She no longer squeezed the chair back. She held the envelope flat against her ribs. I gave Bart envelope D. He took it and looked down at it once, and then his face did a small thing it should not have done in public. It went pale. I did not raise my voice. The room was so quiet, now you could hear the air conditioning. Inside each envelope, I said, is exactly what each of you has been asking for, clarity. That was all I said. Carolyn stepped forward from behind my chair. She had her business card already in her hand. She set it on the white tablecloth in front of Trent. Carolyn Puitt, she said, partner at Puitt and Hayes. I'm Iris's Council of Record. I'd strongly recommend reading the contents before you continue this conversation. Trent slowly opened envelope A. The will was on top. He stared at the title page for 3 seconds. He flipped to the codicil. He read the line about primary caregiver. He turned to my father's letter, 2 pages of careful cursive on lined notebook paper, and his face did something I had not seen since the funeral. His eyes, for 2 seconds no more, got wet. Dad wrote this, he said, barely above a whisper. I nodded once. His lower lip trembled. He was about to say something, maybe to me, maybe to himself. Whit grabbed the letter out of his hand. She's lying, Trent. This is forged. He came back. He shook his head slowly. Whit, he said, that's his handwriting. She turned to him. Her face changed entirely. Trent, don't be weak. She's manipulating you. We talked about this. Diane had opened her envelope and was holding the cease and desist letter in one hand and Carolyn's business card in the other. Her mouth was open. Bart had set his envelope on the cheese board and was staring at the floor. Diane recovered first. She did the thing people do when they've been caught. She got louder. This is an ambush. You invited us here to humiliate us in front of strangers. I did not raise my voice. I didn't move from where I stood. Mrs. Caldwell, I said, none of you were invited. You introduced yourselves to Mrs. Henley as family of the new resident. There are 40 people here who heard you do it. Marge stood up at our table. She was 71 and 4 foot in, and she looked at Diane like a judge who had been waiting for her moment. I heard her say it, Marge said. Mrs. Henley heard her say it. The 2 ladies from 600 heard her say it. Mrs. Henley by the side table nodded once, slow and crisp. I did, in fact. Whit had switched modes. The funeral voice was gone. The tears came easily and fast. Iris, you don't understand what this has done to our family. To Trent. He cries himself to sleep. Do you even care? Do you have any idea what he's been carrying? I looked at Trent. Trent was looking at the floor. Whitney, I said, you are the only person in this room who has cried about my mother in front of me before tonight. My mother, Trent, visited her 3 times in 14 months. He stayed 40 minutes the longest time. Bart near the cheese board tried to break in. Listen, why don't we all just step outside, calm down, take a beat? No one is stepping outside, Carolyn said. Her voice was calm and carried easily across the room. Anyway, the cease and desist is effective immediately. Any further contact with my client comes through me. The packet you're each holding includes my office line. I will respond Monday morning. Diane lifted the envelope toward Carolyn. This is harassment. You can't just... I can, actually, Carolyn said, and I have Mrs. Caldwell. The privacy violation citation is on page 2. Diane went silent. Trent had not moved. He was folding the letter back together with the slow, careful hands of a man who once folded his father's flag at the funeral. He slipped it into the breast pocket of his shirt. Diane found her voice one last time. She was breathing hard. What do you have to say for yourself, Iris? In front of all these people, look at them looking at you. I did. I looked at the room. 40 residents, my new neighbors, the people who would be my neighbors for the next 20 years if I was lucky. All of them still seated, all of them watching. I looked at Trent. He was looking back at me. His eyes were red. He was not going to apologize. I could see that. I could see all the years of him under the surface. The wife pulling at his sleeve, the mortgage, the truck lease debt, the kids he had with Whit, the trips he had wanted to take, and the version of him that might still be in there somewhere but had been very, very busy. I looked at Diane. The logbook said everything. You just refused to read, I told her quietly. I turned, I walked back to table 4. I sat down between Marge and Carolyn. For about 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Whit grabbed Trent's elbow and pulled him toward the doors. He went without resistance. Diane snatched up her purse. She turned for the casserole. Bart, who had not been told what to do, picked the green Pyrex up from the side table by reflex and held it. Diane stormed past him toward the door. Bart followed, still holding the dish. The doors closed behind them. 4 seconds of silence. Then Marge clapped once, very softly. Mrs. Henley cleared her throat. "Well," she said, "let's get to the food, shall we?" 28 days passed. The four Sysandis letters were served by certified mail the following Tuesday. The receipts came back, signed within the week. Trent had hired a lawyer in Greenville who returned Carolyn's call within 48 hours and told her, in the polite language attorneys use, that his client did not intend further contact. The lawyer billed Trent $620 and told him to stop talking. Whit unfollowed me on Instagram. Bart's draft listing on the Zillow agent portal disappeared. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission opened a preliminary file on Bart's solicitation and issued him a warning letter, no suspension. Diane sent me one apology card in a pink envelope with a watercolor of a hummingbird on the front. I read it once. I did not respond. I put it in a shoebox in the closet next to the cedar box. Trent sent one email, 4 lines, no subject. I read what Dad wrote. "I'm sorry I didn't read it sooner. I won't bother you. I hope you're okay." I saved the email to a folder I named Family. I did not reply. The numbers, when I added them up at the end of the month, $1,840 in legal fees, 4 envelopes served, $0 conceded, 0 follow-up incidents, one quiet condo 4 floors above the Sound with a closed door and a deadbolt that worked. On the morning of day 29, I opened the cedar box one more time. I thought I'd seen everything in it. The owl carving, the wedding band, the photographs, the canvas pocket where Mom had hidden her letter. But that morning, for no good reason, except that I wanted to spend a minute with my parents, I lifted out the felt liner at the bottom. Under the liner was a small velvet pouch, the color of old red wine. I'd never seen it before in my life. Inside the pouch was my mother's silver locket, the one I thought had been sold at the estate sale with the rest of her jewelry. She had taken it out. She had hidden it here for me to find. When I opened the locket, the tiny photograph inside was of me, age 6, sitting on my father's lap on the front porch of the house on Elm Street. I was holding a melted ice cream cone. He was laughing. On the back of the velvet pouch, in my mother's pen, 3 lines. "You are always enough by yourself. Don't forget. Love, Mom." I put the locket on. The chain was short. It sat at my collarbone like it had always been there. Family isn't whoever shares your last name. It's whoever read your father's letter the first time and didn't need a second. That's my story. 1 lockbox, 4 envelopes, 40 witnesses, and a quiet locket I still wear. If this reminded you to update your own paperwork or to keep certified copies somewhere safe, take that as a sign. Drop a comment, hit subscribe.